to Mark Evans Coaching. We have both a YouTube channel, which is very popular. We have about 4,200 subscribers on our YouTube channel and continue to grow, as well as our Facebook page at Mark Evans Coaching, where we do daily updates on biomechanics and technique in swimming, cycling, and running. I am a professional endurance sports coach. I've been doing this since the 1980s. And these videos that we do are intended for you to be viewed as if I'm coaching you one-on-one. That's the style that I like to do, and I think that really every individual should be looked at as an individual and should be coached as an individual. There are certainly, great opportunities for group training and group coaching and more generic types of training, but in the whole, it really boils down to how you perform as an individual, how you move as an individual, and then developing or coupling technique into your workouts, I think, is almost more important than the training program itself. That said, today I'm going to answer a question that came from Andreas in Chile. And it was posted on my Mark Evans Coaching Facebook page today. And it's timely because there's been a lot of talk about a change in technique in terms of swimming pulling patterns as compared to what they were in the past. And I'll just go ahead and read it. But you can also go to Mark Evans Coaching and read it as well. Andres says, I'm from Chile. I've been back in the pool since October of 2012. He swam since he was a childhood, but never, the trainers weren't so developed, and he had bad habits. Hard to break. I've changed my stroke from a deep catch to a high elbow. However, I recently found this article from a scientist in Hopkins University, a mechanical engineer, and stating that a deep stroke is more efficient. And he asked me what my thoughts were. And you can see the link to the engineer's video, as well as our U.S. Master Swimming has put a video up from a swim coach in Davis. And I've been not inundated, but I've heard a lot of this talk about the changing of more of a straight arm pull to no sweeps. And I have some things I want to say about this. First of all, I agree with the premise that there is less sweeping as what had maybe been described and demonstrated by authors in the late 60s and 70s and even in the 80s. And I think that the descriptions were appropriate for the time because they were coupling more like a propeller type of approach to catching and holding water. And I think in the diagrams and the things that we saw back then in the drawings, and even that I wrote about in those times in the 90s, are still appropriate. And I think what we tend to do, and I think what some coaches and authors and so forth are doing today, they are actually like discounting those contributions, those important contributions from these earlier scientists like Councilman and McGlisco and others who wrote about in very clear terms about what the lift and drag components of those elements are. And what I'm saying is that we need to embrace those and realize that over time we perfect them. That these ideas and concepts that came 20 and 30 years ago are still valid, but the point is that we are evolving as teachers, as coaches, and as athletes. But I say that to the point of what they're saying about the deep catch, is that there are still small amounts of oblique movements or lateral movements, even with a more straight back pull. And the thing that I have taught for many years is to try to keep those fingertips moving more or less straight downward at the bottom of the pool. you're still getting a down sweep, an out sweep, an in sweep, and an out sweep, but not with this S pattern that is talked about by the engineer, nor talked about or written about in maybe earlier books, or demonstrated really with the swimmers when you actually can compare the underwater swimming strokes. So what I'm trying to say is there's an evolution, but you can't just all of a sudden discount or cut the line, because I think these are principles that can be improved upon. And so to be too dogmatic about the approach, I think is wrong. So what I like to do is to look at not only my own teaching philosophies and principles, but try to embrace those before me, embrace those that are currently out there, having an open mind. And that said, I agree that you want to have a catch, an entry, a down sweep, and more or less the goal should be to keep those fingertips more or less aligned vertically as you're making your catch and your pull in a deeper down sweep. But that hasn't changed since the 60s in Councilman. He wrote about, Doc Councilman, Indiana, coach of Mark Spitz, he wrote about over a barrel, a wine barrel. That is no different than what the doctor was saying or the engineer is saying today. It's no different. The difference is the sweep, and I think it was really probably overemphasized this sweeping pattern, and maybe not even their what their true meaning was. I think what they meant was that there is a slight amount of lateral or outward, downward, and backward sweeping when you're making your catch. If you look at it from behind, you're going to see that the arm just naturally articulates downward, outward, and backward during this down sweep. It naturally does that. You can't pull it straight back, most generally. And then there's a slight rounding off an in sweep where the most propulsion occurs during the stroke. But this doesn't mean you want to oversweep, because if you oversweep, you lose hold. It'd be like flying an airplane and all of a sudden you turn the wings. And you're gonna drop straight down. There needs to be that lift force. And that's what we're really trying to teach people, is to where in terms of their own anatomical capacity, capability, their flexibility and mobility and their strength and stability, are they able to hold water the best without slipping? And I see a lot of this slipping in the water, where the hand will go to the least resistive point. So yes, I agree with this more straight down sweep and stroke, but I still think there's this sweeping phase, this articulating phase that needs to be considered. There is always going to be some oblique shifting. Without it, you're not going to get the lift. And so I think it's important to look at this new stuff, but you can't look at that without looking at the past. And in my new book, in the fall or spring when we come out, Triathletes in Motion, it's really an encyclopedic review of all the principles that I've had in coaching and certainly some of the others. I think some are principles, and I don't really think that this is a new technique, really, as opposed to just identifying it a little more clearly. I think the biggest thing you can take out of it is what you're talking about in terms of the fingertip positions. I don't think it's really a lower elbow. I think you're still going to have that nice high elbow position, but it's really just trying to orient that hand and keep that position, or what I call body lines and postures, in place. It's really about hitting postures and positions as opposed to sweeps. I know we call it sweeps, down sweep, in sweep, out sweep, up sweep, but it's really variant points of positions and postures. Anyway, Andreas, I thank you for your question, and I thought I'd do a video in return. And best of luck. I'm Mark Evans, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.